This is Bible School Radio, KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, KYJC, Commerce, and KMWC, Bethany. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, how are banks and credit card companies handling bad debt? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, there's a lot of debt floating around out there, and how do consumers handle that debt when it goes bad? Today, credit and debt expert Wayne Sanford is here to weigh in. Wayne, good to have you on the program.
Thanks for bringing me on again.
So let's start off with a comparison. Everybody likes to look back at the last time when we had about as much debt as we've got today. We've got more debt today, which was the financial crisis in 2008. And they like to compare it. If you compared the two time periods, which would you say has the bigger crisis potential?
Oh, wow. Well, obviously 08 really hit because of the housing market, because if anyone's seen any of those shows or should I say movies like The Big Short, Too Big to Fail, investors just were pressuring the banks to make easier credit requirements, allowing more people to buy houses when they weren't financially stable enough to do that. Here, now we're getting sort of the combination of prices for products, including houses and just everyday groceries, are at an obscene level, and our income levels aren't matching that. So it's, in my viewpoint, we're coming to a point at some time where something's going to happen.
You know, Wayne, one of the reasons I like having you on the program is that you can tell us in real time what you're seeing and what the creditors are doing. And we'll talk about this a little bit, but I mean, I think that we, just like you said, we're coming to a point here where this is the fact that we've got $1.3 trillion worth of debt hanging out just in consumer credit cards is going to be a real problem. But you said that Capital, in my show notes, you have that Capital One Bank and Citibank are, and let me make sure that I'm saying this right, are closing accounts after one payment that doesn't go through.
I have 2 or 3 customers, and one of them with a different bank that is a very, very high net worth client. But I'll tell you that story later. But one gentleman, it's your typical, he forgot, he didn't transfer something, and then when he went to make the payment, I think he punched in, let's say the minimum payment was 101, let's say 101, and he paid 99, it paid a few dollars short. He made the payment, and then the next day his card was closed. He called them up. He's had them for 2 years. It literally makes no sense whatsoever. And he was calling and asking me, and then just recently I had somebody else that just had their card closed out of nowhere. She has an auto draft set up. She had a banking issue where there was some possible fraud, where everyone gets the text message saying, hey, we think there's possible fraud on your account. They gave her a call. She called them back because these days who trusts somebody saying they're representing your bank? You're going to call on the back of your card and let them patch you through. And she explained what happened, and unfortunately, customer service, my apologies to anyone who actually works in customer service. That's your listeners. You're probably one of the good ones. But they were like, yeah, that's what the system did. There's nothing we can do about it. And just closed her card, and I think she said she had it for 3 years. And there is something you can do. It's just the laziness of people just blows my mind away.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, does she have a balance on the account?
She had a balance, and of course, once the card's closed, even though it was good, paid on time, it's going to now have a negative effect on your credit because there is a portion of the credit formula, and 15% of your overall score goes to history. So that 3 years worth of good history now closed drops her score, and then if you have a card that's closed with the balance, she takes another small hit on top of that.
So in this particular situation, did they raise the interest rates on her?
That was not discussed. They just closed the card right on her.
Yes, it seems like that if you make any mistake, A, they don't care. B, they care more about cutting out risk. Well, he or she must be a risk, so we need to close down this account. Or we need to, if they haven't been using this credit line in a while, we need to cut down this credit line. And it just seems like they know that we got a little bit of a problem on our hands. So we better start.
They're sniffing something.
Yeah, exactly. If anything even looks wrong, we're gonna take action.
Right, and if you remember way back in the day when we had the '08 financial crisis, I remember a gentleman, and I mean I've been in the credit industry now for 20 years. This one gentleman came to me, and this had to be before the meltdown. He had about a 570 credit score, and he owed $500,000 in credit card bills. And and they were like, oh, the banks were just giving me $20,000 line of credit, $50,000 line of credit. I think I mentioned once back in '05, a gentleman was on the local news and he showed a credit card, and he got so tired of all the mail at the time before everything became electronic. He filled out his dog's information and he got a credit card. Mm-hmm. And they showed it on TV, so they were just giving away so much. But when the meltdown hit, obviously investors freaked, and they shrunk the market cap of available line of credit from $3.5 trillion down to, I think it was about 1.7. Don't hold me exact to the numbers. And for obvious reasons, they shrunk the belt. I'm seeing a little bit of a pattern now. Of course, it's my opinion. But if all of a sudden they're closing down credit lines or limiting credit lines, and there might not be a feasible reason as to why, you start seeing articles that are coming out where credit card delinquencies now just crossed over for credit cards and auto pre-pandemic levels. So again, you and I were just, our sniffers are up.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Talking to Wayne Sanford about debt and credit and what's going on in real time with the banks and credit card companies. You said that there was one situation that you came across where a payment was not made, and it was an identity theft. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it was, and we don't know yet because this has literally happened about a week and a half ago. She doesn't know if it's identity theft yet. There was just some possible fraud detection. Somebody, all of a sudden you get a phone call from fraud, or they have you reach out, and they're asking, you're in Texas, but hey, are you happen to be in Tennessee, or are you currently in California? Well, there were some charges. They flagged it, and they stopped it. Well, most of the time they're going to, obviously your card number's been compromised, they're going to close the card, issue you a new one, and on your credit report it'll show, hey, that card was closed due to lost, and then they'll open up another one with the same information. That's just kind of what they do. Well, during the course of that, she had a payment that was coming out, and she informed, like I had said, the bank, hey guys, I just got hit with the fraud. I can actually get a letter from my bank showing that there was fraud detected. They're shipping me out a new card. This is not my fault. And the representative is just like, well, this is what it's telling us to do, so there's really nothing we can do to override it. And she just called me just in complete bewilderment.
So you also said that banks are not wanting to settle accounts like they have in the past, and they're threatening to send accounts to lawyers that they say they may and they might, they allude to it. I've always been under the impression that they can't threaten that unless they actually have the ability to do so. Is that still the case?
It's still the case. So what happens is, in the state of Texas, when you go delinquent on a debt, and what I mean by that, meaning the debt is charged off, We talked to a customer today. He had a car. There was a problem with the car. He handed it back to them just because they were saying there was a problem. They couldn't fix it or was charging an arm and a leg. Ultimately, whatever the story is, he gave the car back, and whatever the difference was, he's now responsible. Well, if they decide once they charge off the account, which is a certain amount of time with non-payment, they can now, if they want to, continue collection efforts. They could outsource it to a collection agency to call. I'd use the term harass, but reach out and try to get paid. Or they could file a lawsuit against them. If they decide to sell the debt to a debt buyer, that debt buyer will continue collection activities or just turn around, depending on the size of the debt sometimes, just file a lawsuit against you. And unfortunately, they're the new owners of the debt. And if they decide to sue you, they sue you. You have a judgment against you, and unfortunately, it's a fairly easy thing for them to do because a good 75+% of people never file a response because they know they owe the money. And for most people, it's the standard, well, I don't have a house, they can't do anything to me. Well, I think we talked on one of the previous shows where now they're hiring attorneys to go and garnish their bank accounts.
Right.
And just freeze all the money in the bank accounts. Now, there's a process to it. Doesn't happen overnight. There is a way around things, just like there is in life with everything. But it's something that they're getting a lot more proactive on.
I do want to mention this, too, that they're actually, and I think you'd probably agree, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is a great set of legislation that does protect the consumer. And are you seeing any of these debt collectors getting taken to court? I used to have a guy an attorney who came on the program a long time ago, and that's all he did for a living was he sued debt collectors because they're always breaking the law.
Yep. I'm constantly seeing there's some ways out there that you can check on these things, and I'm constantly seeing people suing, but almost every single time, and I want to say 90% of the time, I'm seeing the judge in favor of the collection company.
Really?
And ultimately, it's primarily because, if you think about it, these debt companies, they have associations, they have lawyers, they study the law, they're told hey, you join our membership and you pay $1,000 a year, we'll help provide you guidance as to what you can or cannot do. Now, of course, that doesn't mean those debt companies are following those instructions, but they have guidance that if brought to court, this is what we followed, here's the protocol, here's the laws that are cited. It's a little difficult. Now, if you get the type of collection company that buys the debt from two other debt buyers, let's say Capital One sold the debt to ABC, they sold it to XYZ, and then number 1, 2, 3 company is the new owner, and they sue. Well, do they have the chain of title? Can you prove it? I'm dealing with the customer right now. I'm helping in California. Now, of course, I'm not an attorney. Don't play one on TV. But we started looking at things, and I just told him, hey, listen, they're supposed to provide this. The lawsuit that they filed, close to the statute of limitations where it expires, and they provided such little documentation. I said, look, I'm not an attorney, but based on what I'm seeing, I don't think they have the information if you challenge it. And he's in the process of challenging it, so that's a case in the making as we speak.
You mentioned debt buyers. Talk about how that kind of changes the scenario up a little bit in the collection process.
Well, I don't like them. What I'm noticing is they're getting, and I mean, I don't have a problem. I mean, the truth is ultimately the truth. One of the the three largest out there is LV&V Funding, Portfolio Recovery Associates, and then Midland Funding. Those are the three big ones. There are thousands of other ones, but those are the big three that go to the banks and buy technically hundreds and millions of dollars worth of debt. Obviously it's pennies on the dollar, so they're spending very little, but they're buying bulk. I'm noticing that in the old days, they would turn around and settle for a huge discount that, some people may not be happy with it, but it's a heck of a lot cheaper. And now they're saying, oh, well, we can give you a 10% discount, on this $1,000 account, we can settle for $900 even though they paid $40 for it.
So,
and again, you're talking to customer service, so their system only allows them to do so much.
So debt buyers or debt collectors or the creditor themselves, they're just not willing to settle like they used to.
You would think for somebody that buys debt, and I understand why they do it, and I'll tell you, but you would think that if somebody buys an account for, they buy $1,000 debt, and they're paying 2 cents, 3 cents on the dollar, according to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's survey, that's, what is that, $40, give or take, and somebody says, hey, I'll give you $400. You would think that that's I can't even do the math on that one, how much of a profit margin that is, but you would think they take it, but they go, no, we can only accept $900. Well, obviously the reason why they do that is because if you're calling to settle, you might be one of 100 people where the other 99 don't care. So the people that are actually trying to do the right thing, whether it's for your own benefit or just trying to do the right thing, you're the one that ultimately gets penalized.
And also, this isn't. I think what people they assume that if a debt collector or a creditor is going to settle with them, that they'll put them on a payment plan, but they want that money right there, right?
They would love the funds up front, one lump sum or anything like that. As an example, let's say, hey, we'll give you a 30% discount on the $1,000 credit card, as an example, if you pay it up front. If you can't, we can only give you a 15% discount, but we can break it into 12 payments.
So at least they're working with
obviously
consumers that way.
If you can do a one and done, so to speak, then they're willing to give you a bigger discount. Although, to be honest, 30% I kind of laugh at, but that's another story.
Well, let's talk a little bit about a successful legal case. A debt collector owns the debt. They file a judgment against the consumer. It's easily won. Now, in that case, and you talked a little bit about this earlier, but go into a little more detail. What new collection options does the lender have at this point?
Well, they've always had access to do this. It's starting to become a little bit more prevalent. I'm dealing with somebody else right now in the state of California, and to be honest, it's probably because it's California. But this woman, it was a credit card, $8,000 with a bank that's American. It's an American bank, and her only income is Social Security benefit and child support, and I think she's got some sort of a medical challenge. So she works part-time, and she makes maybe $700 a month. So obviously not exactly, living the high life, doesn't shop on Rodeo Drive, that sort of thing. They sued her. And, she even said, guys, listen, here's my income. Here's my bank statements. I don't know why you want to sue me. I don't have property underneath my name. She lives in a family residence that they own. So she's living there for free, basically. I mean, family's taking care of family. And she had said to them that, hey, I can't do anything. I don't have the funds to give you. Here's where my bank account starts and here's where it ends. I mean, it is clearly obvious that she couldn't pay $15 a month if she wanted to. They sued her anyway because, again, when they decide to sue, they just sue portfolios, not individuals. So if you happen to be in that portfolio, you're getting picked. And then she just reached out to me. This was 2 years ago. They're now filing what's called a writ, which means now they're going to garnish her bank accounts. And they're going to reach out to the state because it's California and they can take up to 25%, but there are exemptions, and everything that she collects is exempt, even her paycheck, just because it falls below a certain threshold. So it's almost like, what is wrong with you idiots? So they're wasting probably a few $1,000s in attorney fees that they'll end up tacking onto her debt, but they can't collect anything because her bank account collects. It has maybe an average of $40 or $50 at the end of the month.
So in a situation like that, does bankruptcy offer any protection?
Yes. The only thing bankruptcy doesn't protect against, which is the reason why there wasn't 100 million bankruptcies filed, is student loan debt. That's the only thing they can't really discharge. Now, I've heard some cases where they're able to discharge some, But to me, it's like a unicorn. You hear about it, but I've never actually seen a case on it. But not saying that there's not some sort of a case out there. But if she decided to file bankruptcy, she could do that. That would protect everything. But she has that judgment. She doesn't really have much in her bank for them to take, and what's there they can't touch because it's exempt. It would make no sense for her to file something like that. So she happens to be one of those people that you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Just like how many people out there now, because of the home prices increasing, have so much equity, but because of credit card debt or maybe a couple of mislaid payments, they can't access that unless they sell their house.
So tell me this: what steps does a consumer take if legal action occurs? I mean, I've always kind of been, and you tell me if you agree or disagree with this, I've always been under the impression that, and this is just through observation, that if 95% of the people who get filed, get into a judgment type situation, get an attorney, that their chances of getting out of that are much better than the 95 who don't. I think that debt collectors and credit card companies, I mean, they're more interested in the ones who aren't going to take any action and get the easy judgment.
To be honest, they don't actually care. So what happens is it's not like it is on TV, because I've come across people that are trying to qualify for a house. They're fixing a few things on their credit, and when we do a quick general search, we find out they've been sued. And, of course, you think, just like TV and the movies, like nobody walked up to me, asked me my name, and handed me some paperwork, and that's just how it is on TV. It's a completely different civil process on serving with that sort of stuff. But the moment you get sued, there are what I call, and I'm probably insulting some of them, so sorry, gang, but the moment they're sued, there's lawyers that buy marketing lists that say, all of a sudden you may get 12 different letters that say, hey, we're so-and-so law firm, there's a lawsuit filed against you, we can help you fight this in court, so on and so forth, hey, here's what we charge. And unless it's obvious, now again, my opinion, there's always going to be a different kind of a case, but majority of the times that I've seen, that I've talked to people, is they're just going to say, oh, hey, yes, it's Bank of America, oh, yes, they do have all the documentation, hey, we can help you settle. And they just settle the account. So it's not exactly fighting unless there's an honest-to-goodness case, and certain companies have a reputation that don't really follow how things work. So again, credit's like a thumbprint, and in this, like lawsuits are like a thumbprint. Every case is going to be different.
It's interesting. I was just thinking about this. I personally think, and I'm not wishing this to happen, and I'm not encouraging people to do this. I just think that it's going to happen. With interest rates at 22 to 24%, depending on who you follow, it just seems to me like people are going to go, I just can't do this, and you're going to see the great default.
I think those are low.
The great, it could be great default happen, and if you took everybody that you could sue for credit card debt, and you took the number of attorneys that are out there and the amount of court time, there's no way you'd have enough attorneys to take all those cases.
Correct. Yeah, that would be an impossible task.
So I just wonder if there's
a coordinated effort.
I just think that I wonder if there's going to come a time where it's getting so bad with defaults that some people end up slipping by the statute of limitations in the state that they live.
I definitely believe so. I mean, I've seen some attorney firms out here in the Dallas area that file suit on somebody when I look at, when somebody lets me know.
Hey,
if they
Wayne,
have to be a client or
that's the end of the segment. Okay. Real quick, what's your web address?
WayneTheCreditGuy.com.
Okay, great, Wayne. Thanks for coming on. This is Bob Brooks. We are all out of time. Until we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.